This morning, we're beginning a new series called Today's Climate Challenge, Tomorrow's Global Opportunity. With a record-setting hurricane season, the warmest April ever, and rising ocean temperatures, many are saying global warming is in fact to blame. Former Vice President Al Gore is one of them, and now he's bringing his message to a theater near you. The last memory many Americans may have of Al Gore is the night of December 13, 2000, when he withdrew his challenge to the election that put George W. Bush in the White House.
I offer my concession.
But times have changed. Mr. Gore now finds himself the summer's most unlikely movie star, promoting his new film, An Inconvenient Truth, which he's described as a nature hike through the book of Revelation.
If you look at the 10 hottest years ever measured, they've all occurred in the last 14 years.
And the hottest of all was 2005.
In the movie, Mr. Gore presents a high-tech slideshow he's been giving for years, which contains an avalanche of evidence he says points to one thing: the climate is changing, and a crisis is on the horizon. But before delivering the bad news, he breaks the ice with a little comedy.
I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America.
We met in Central Park to talk about the future, the past, and his newfound stardom. I think in this movie, at different turns, you're funny, vulnerable, disarming, self-effacing. And someone said after watching it, quote, if only he was like this before, maybe things would have turned out differently in 2000.
Well, I benefit from low expectations. I've been through a lot since then. And the old cliche is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, I often joke when I start speeches now by saying, put yourselves in my position. I flew on Air Force Two for 8 years, and now I have to take off my shoes to get on an airplane. But I sometimes do say to the people patting me down, I say, hey, look, I was mad after the election, but I wasn't that mad.
But he's plenty mad about global warming, and he painstakingly lays out the evidence in the movie and a book, saying that the phenomenon has already had a major impact. Why is it that this is what you wanted to really focus on?
I think what we're facing is a planetary emergency. It's by far the most dangerous crisis our civilization has ever confronted. And it's a challenge to our moral imagination. How could we be having this kind of catastrophic effect on the Earth's environment? It's hard to imagine that we could be, but we are.
As succinctly as possible, can you explain the crisis?
We've quadrupled our population on the Earth in the last 100 years, and our technologies are thousands of times more powerful. And one consequence of that is that we're now filling up the thin layer of atmosphere that surrounds the Earth with so much pollution that it's trapping much more of the sun's heat inside the atmosphere and heating up the planet. And that messes up the weather, it causes more droughts, ironically more flooding at the same time, and more powerful hurricanes. We have to rein in this very dangerous wave of pollution that we're putting up there every single day.
People on the other side of the debate say, yes, it's getting warmer, but the Earth's average temperature has done this before. We may have something to do with it, but it hasn't warmed that much, and it's not going to have catastrophic consequences anytime soon.
There's really not a debate. The debate's over. The scientific community has reached as strong a consensus as you will ever find in science. There are a few oil companies and coal companies that spend millions of dollars a year to put these pseudoscientists out there pretending there is a debate. It's exactly the same thing that the tobacco companies did after the Surgeon General warned us about the linkage between smoking and lung disease.
Where there is disagreement among scientists is not if, but when we may see drastic environmental changes across the globe. Al Gore says the clock is ticking.
This is Patagonia 75 years ago and the same glacier today. This is Mount Kilimanjaro 30 years ago and last year.
What do you see happening in, say, 15 to 20 years or even 50 years if nothing changes?
Well, what I think is going to happen is that we're going to respond to it. But if we didn't respond, then what you would find is desertification of the mid-continental areas in the U.S., Europe, Asia, Africa, the melting of the polar ice cap, and the beginnings of the same thing in Antarctica, sea level increases of 20 feet or more worldwide. Of course, Florida and Louisiana and Texas are particularly vulnerable. The San Francisco Bay Area, Manila, and we have seen the impact of a couple of 100,000 refugees from an environmental crisis. Imagine 100 million or 200 million.
Even Manhattan would be in deep water, right?
Yes, in fact, the World Trade Center Memorial Site would be underwater.
Some people might say, oh boy, there's that tree-hugging
Yeah.
Al Gore, he's at it again. Some people might dismiss you out of hand.
Look, I've been trying to tell this story for 30 years, and I have a new ally in telling this story. Unfortunately, Mother Nature is weighing in very powerfully and very loudly, and people are listening. It's not a political issue. It's a moral issue.
A once defeated Al Gore is now basking in the limelight, soaking up standing ovations and stellar reviews. He even showed up recently on Saturday Night Live, where he played, of all things, President Al Gore.
In the last 6 years, we have been able to stop global warming. No one could have predicted the negative results of this. Glaciers that once were melting are now on the attack.
All this, of course, has led to the inevitable question. Needless to say, all this positive response has led to a lot of speculation that you're going to run for president. Let's just put it out there.
I don't intend to be a candidate ever again. And
Never, never, never?
well, look, I have no plans to be a candidate and no intention of being a candidate. I've said that I'm not at the stage in my life where I'm going to say never in the rest of my life will I ever think about such a thing.
What does that mean?
It means that I was in politics for a long time and ran for national office 4 times, and I'm 58 years old, and that used to sound like the oldest age in the world to me. Now I'm trying to convince myself that
it's
58
a new 38?
is the new something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that line. I don't quite buy it, but look, I'm enjoying serving in other ways. I really enjoy my life now. I am involved in a kind of a campaign, but it's not for a candidacy. It's a campaign to change the minds of the American people about this climate crisis